introduce our guests. First of all, Sergey Romanov, Director of Department of Budgetary Methodology and Public Sector Financial Reporting, Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation. Ivan Tsetsersky, Chairman of the Board of the All-Russian Association for Development of Local Self-Governments. Andrei Maximov, Chairman of the Commission of Territorial Development and Local Self-Government of the Public Chamber of the Russian Federation. Lira Ektisamova, Minister of Finance of the Republic of Bashkortostan. Artur Repin, First Deputy Director of Finance Department of the Yamal-Nenets Autonomous Area. Joanna Pinto, Council of the Municipality of Cascais, Portugal. She is with us online. And Tarson Nunes, Research Department of Economics and Statistics, Ministry of Planning, Budget and Management, State of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. Do we have results of the voting? Could you please demonstrate them on the screen? The results will be at the end. Great, I would like to give the floor to Sergey Romanov. Please take the floor. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. Actually, the list of questions for voting and today's subject are connected. If we look at the history and think about events which took place in 2017, we had a session on initiative budgeting. The topic was initiative budgeting as a tool to improve efficiency of budgetary expenses. In 2018, we hosted a large conference within the forum where the initiative budgeting was discussed from the point of view of resource of development and participation of citizens in this resource of development. And today, our topic is initiative budgeting as a form of dialogue between the government and the population. Being the first speaker, I will do my best to answer the question, what is the difference and what has happened, what has changed over the last years, including from the point of view of a dialogue. Many experts understand the term dialogue differently, but there are two major approaches. Number one is conflictless interaction of participation of participants of the dialogue, their balanced cooperation, or it's a debate, it's a war of opinions when the dialogue reflects active position of its participants. And at the same time, if we speak about dialogue of population and the government, the state and the society, there is a range of positions which really close to the subject which we discussed today. Public dialogue, civil dialogue, participation, civil participation, government participation, deliberative dialogue, there is such a term, which is one of the forms of the dialogue related to making certain opinions or decisions. I'm not going to dwell on the terminology. I'm willing to express my position. The dialogue between the government and the society and the population is one of the most important form of public dialogue today. And the basis of this dialogue includes two basic positions. Number one, deliberation of what I have said when within the interactions between two parties of the dialogue, by analyzing the reasons, factors, you come to joint decisions, well-balanced decision, a mechanism which allows to do a backup, to go back, to overview all the positions, to review them. Such a soft, very symmetric form of dialogue for all the participants. And number two is that citizens are participating, they are committed to dialogue, they take part in joint events, inclusion of social and demographic groups of citizens which, due to some reasons at this moment, are not make part of this dialogue. At the same time, today, if we speak about the dialogue of population and the government, in regards of initiative budgeting, to my point of view, this ratio between initiative budgeting and the dialogue have very interesting directions. We will speak about that because we have all the indicators. We were talking about increasing of efficiency of budgetary expenses, then we were speaking that we have discussing that we have to involve citizens, we have to support attempts of citizens to participate in decision making. And today we can say that a permanent system which is in place of practices of initiative budgeting is a dialogue between the government and the population. And it has an atmosphere of very important part of this dialogue. We can speak about electorate. Electorate is not only a group of people who have the right to vote, but like about a group of people who make community together with the government to resolve the issues and problems which the government is obliged to resolve, and the population supports these decisions and accordingly is participants, electorate of this group. Both approaches, these elements, form the foundation of practices of initiative budgeting, which today resolve very concrete tasks: transparency, openness of authorities and government. These are the practices of initiative budgeting, which is an element to strengthen cooperation, connection between government and the population, solving problems of the citizens at the territories of their residence, and as a result, redistribution of public resources aimed at solving priority problems. Task to involve different groups of population within the process of initiative budgeting. It is growing, this area is growing, we have more and more new practices which are not common, to which we got used to over the years, but some practices which cover some specific groups of people, of population, for example, students, pupils, budgeting of projects related to disabled people and their provision with certain results. And of course, another task which initiative budgeting is solving at the moment is development of skills and potential of the community itself. They learn, these people learn to develop territory, to interact and to represent their interests. It's a very important task. This is the task which has to become one of priorities, one of the key tasks, because based on that, population need to get a habit, need to get used to take part in life of their territory, understanding that they have an opportunity to impact on some decisions and make these decisions together with the government, with authorities. If we talk about practices, what is the dialogue? Communication between the population and the government starts from the very first stage of implementation of practices, the project cycle, and it continues during the whole period of implementation of projects of initiative budgeting, which we are talking about. And the key factor of success here is permanent contact of administration, not only with active part of participants of initiative budgeting process who are involved in the processes, but also taking measures to invite other citizens that may be passive as observers or as participants. Usually takes place in form of information campaigns aimed at popularization and promotion of different practices within the framework of their operation and within the framework of results analyzing. This is one of the forms which today is valid. This is in force. Budgetary commissions and committees which discuss issues of projects of initiative budgeting. And these authorities, these bodies, form so-called professional citizens who have more professional approaches to participations in decision making. They learn how to do that. They are trained. There are special events, training events, and after that, these professional citizens, after the training procedures, after this participation, including and very often get involved, take part, and start their career in the municipal or different authorities. It's so-called social elevator for many representatives of the population, which allows them to do that. That is why such approaches of interaction provide very wide covering of citizens in the form of a live dialogue. Now we have internet resources, internet platforms, groups in messengers, which allows to expand our possibilities to attract citizens. It means that my time is so socially responsible telephone without a moderator. Public character of such decisions, which are made with participation of citizens, means that they are performed in interests of the society, but not only. They are controlled, and it's public control at all the stages, which provides an opportunity to legitimize all these decisions made by the authorities, by the government. And on the other hand, they confirm that the government is legitimate. Such a dialogue between population and government has these double effects, and such a dialogue has to be regulated. Its format should be determined. That is why the President of the Russian Federation set the task to provide legislation to regulate, to control that. And within this framework, we made amendments to the budgetary code and other legislative normatives to provide a legal basis for regulation of this process, which allowed to provide a legal basis for these tools. It allowed us to provide municipalities with an opportunity to develop their practices at their territories. Such a legislative factor became an impetus for further development. And today, we have the following understanding. Development of such a dialogue between the government and the population requires not only openness of the government. Government is open. It's willing to provide all the necessary information and materials for public control, for monitoring its activities. But such an approach and dialogue requires activities by the population as well, and this is very important. Today, if we have many forms of such dialogue. Public chambers, expert councils of the authorities and government bodies, other tools. But this is the one party. And on the other hand, it's very important to use this platform. We are providing them. We are willing to form them. It's very important for the population to interact, to take part in that. And as an example of such readiness, we have a regulation website, and where we upload the drafts, documents for discussion, and after that we report to the government about the remarks, comments, how many of them, and what was our response to that. And if we ask a question, how active the public and the population use these platforms, these tools, and the answer is that it could be much better in comparison with the situation that we have today. And if we speak about initiative budgeting, as dialogue from these points of view, in addition to positive results related to increasing efficiency of budgetary expenses, which are part of these projects, with satisfaction of citizens when implementing these projects, there are also some more positive bonuses which influence the dialogue between the population and the government. First of all, the process of initiative budgeting is de facto more interesting than traditional forms of public hearings at the budget meetings, and the number of people who visit these public hearings are less than initiative budgeting discussion. And the next important thing, if we talk about electorate among the participants of initiative budgetings, the majority of them are representatives of not political associations which are focused on solving the problems of territory. And of course, there is a high share of working population. That is why involving of these groups of population is very important, to provide dialogue with the government, to turn face to face and to talk. And number 3, which I have already mentioned, initiative budgeting as a process is a very good social elevator of professional growth. This allows us to train high-skilled, interested experts who work with us. That is why today, as a conclusion, I can say that there is a positive shift which took place. The processes of initiative budgeting, it became adult. It became more mature. We see it, we witness it, because we understand how people talk about that, why they talk about that. In comparison with the situation which we had 5 or 6 years ago, it's a very significant growth. And it's not just increasing of budgetary expenses efficiency. It's a mechanism of a dialogue between the government and the population. Thank you very much, Sergei. Actually, you gave us a perfect picture of this image, these colors, which government and public and population can use to make these necessary important projects within initiative budget. And I believe that we have to dwell more about the future, because we do not have to stop now. There are many other tools which we could use to expand initiative budgeting. This is the target declared by the president. We can use them within the frameworks of the public programs, taxation system. People should pay taxes on targets, some targeted. There were the targeted loans for local projects. There are many different ideas. But which is the most important point? What is our next step, according to the Ministry of Finance? When a child grows up, it is too late to teach this child something. It's necessary to. The only possible way is to guide a child or an adult already. Speaking about perspectives, first of all, is expanding of practices. We have a big number of different practices today of initiative budgeting, and to my point of view, they can be divided into 2 groups. Probably it's rural and municipal and urban. One practice provides for participation of population, discussion of projects, materials and financing, participation of citizens in implementation of these projects, and these are municipalities which do not have enough funds to resolve all the necessary issues. And the second, urban, is when people delegate representatives in form of groups or budgetary committees when the question of co-financing is not on the agenda. And one of the most popular practices of involving citizens into the dialogue with government. These are two major groups. That is why I believe that if we talk about the future, we shall talk about development of different practices, different forms of cooperation, involvement of those social and demographic groups of populations which do not take part at the moment. They are willing, they are ready for that, but due to different reasons, they are not participating now. And now it's time to actively speak. And this is what our Center of Initiative Budgeting is involved at. We discuss practices of students budgeting, pupils budgeting. Actually, there are no examples. If we, for example, one day we will say that in this university we have practices of initiative budgeting. No, we don't have. There is student self-government, some other tools and mechanisms, but they are different. This is where we should develop it. And second question, as you have mentioned, the question when we say more and more often to which extent approaches involving the population take place within the improvement, for example, of rural areas. It's very important too, but now it is part of government programs, but it's a very small share. Actually, everything could be developed under the auspices of initiative budgeting. There should be more such projects. And another area which is very important to my point of view is development of IT within these practices, because we live in the era of digitalization. That is why, if we don't take into account new tools which we can use to organize this work, to involve as many people as possible and provide them with all the necessary information. This is something that we will have to do, and it should be at the very high level. Not just messengers, not social networks, but we need to think which social networks with which group of population. Because you can do that in Instagram, for example. You can post on Instagram, but according to the latest evaluations of Instagram, it's a platform 76% of the Instagram accounts belong to women. It's a women messenger social network. There are other messengers and social networks with other groups, social groups of people. That is why we have to choose carefully where we shall publish these materials. There are many questions from our colleagues from the regions about the legislative basis. Different questions about the period of consideration of adoption. Of course, we understand that we do not have the practice, legal practice, because the law was adopted on the 1st of January, and during this period we already have some examples. We need time out to work this out and to make amendments and to finalize the legislation. Thank you very much. Actually, for 1 year it's probably enough, and the next year we will meet again and we'll invent something else, because it's a process that changes. It's alive. Dear colleagues, we heard federal point of view, how is the dialogue developing, what are the plans, and what is the form of the dialogue. Now we will give the floor to our colleagues from municipalities, from the regions. And I would like to give the floor and the clicker and everything I have to Ivan Tsetsersky. Another socially oriented telephone. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Sergei has already dwelt on many aspects, and he was one of the initiators of the development of legislation. We know that he invested a lot of efforts. He was a pioneer. You remember, these were such intentions of the regions to have public budget, and in many regions there were implementation of the orders of the electorate. And today we have this area of initiative budgeting. What is different? A lot of things are different. I will give you one example of one mayor of the city. I talked to him the day before yesterday, and we were talking about initiative budgeting. How is initiative budgeting in your municipality? The region provided 2 million rubles. What can I do with these 2 million rubles? I said, yeah, that's not enough. That's not a lot. And I allocated 45 million rubles for the initiative budgeting. Do you understand how confused he is? What do we need to tell them? We need to train them. We need to teach them. And Sergei was saying that. I don't know how can I change the slide? I apologize. Our Association of Self-Government is the strongest. We have 96 associations. We cover territories from Far East to Kaliningrad. And one of the key factors is, of course, monitoring of everything what's happened in local municipalities and governments. We have agreed the latest version of the state policy. You can see it on the screen, and I quoted 4 abstracts. Involvement of citizens is the key factor everywhere. We were talking about that a lot. Regional projects, initiative projects, national projects, and the president emphasizes the role of the budget. The budget should be very understandable, very clear to people, not only by financial experts. By the way, congratulations on the day of financial experts, and many people said that nobody is happy with them, but that's not true, because they protect every head of municipality. From jail, for example, they control every signature, and there is a Minister of Finance. She understands very well what I'm talking about, and the head of the Republic understands it even better. I will skip one slide, please. Focus on that slide. 85 entities have to adopt this law, but there are only 62 of them who did that in January. Where are another 23? They are not here. And the share of initiative budgeting in the projects 0.1, 0.3%. Of course, only few people understand what is this. 5% from what? From revenue or expenses or accumulated revenue or the net profit. It needs to be clarified because nobody understands. Sergei Romanov has said that this is the first process of implementation, of introducing. These are the model acts developed by Sergei. We have sent that to Sergei. Please analyze that. I will go back because it's thank you for your attention, but I need to go back to the slide I skipped. Regarding practices of initiative budgeting, please pay attention to implementation and the level of involvement of people. The mayor is the mayor interested in involving people into initiative budgeting? Imagine that you are a mayor. You know people, the population of the place of your residence. Do you really like an idea to have an idea, to have a project imposed to you, and you know that you do not have funds to implement that. Who would agree? Are there people here who would agree to that? Please raise your hands, and I will ask you why. Are there any people who agree? If you sincerely say that you are against it, just imagine how this initiative budgeting is implemented in the regions. A citizen has no idea about that. Head of administration who is responsible for that undoubtedly is not interested, because otherwise citizens will take part in his financial projects. The deputy corps wants financing, and they don't like to have somebody else in parallel. That is why, unfortunately, at the moment, it's almost impossible to implement the initiative budgeting in local places, local governments, etc. Because we need to teach them, we need to train them. Let's imagine a yard for apartment buildings, for houses, and of course it's divided according to the code. They have their area for sports, for children, and who is responsible for which part of that property? 4 houses, 1 yard. According to the code, the joint property is the subject of financing by residents of which house? If the playground requires repayment, who is responsible for that? Who is guilty in this situation? And at the municipal level, we analyze implementation, and we faced such situation in many cities. It really requires regulation. That is why today we see very negative practices, which is of our concern because they involve citizens, residents. As President say, will not be involved if we do not educate heads of municipalities, if we do not educate our municipal community. Today, implementation of initiative projects takes place massively through the through the companies, through the organizations which are not legal entities, and they are concerned because they cannot be provided with financial support. And we have the Institute of Responsible People. When they speak about their problems, they say that we have many projects in this municipal area. Nobody knows then my application will be subject for financing. We are not talking about the amount of financing. Minister in Bashkortostan, where they have a lot of municipalities, can express her opinion, because we have the majority of municipalities located in the Republic of Tatarstan and Republic of Bashkortostan. These are 2 republics, and we know all the problems in Bashkortostan, for instance. That is why I am looking forward to listen to your presentation. The proposal which we have is to give the status of public observer, and it should be documented, because any initiative project have to be accompanied by the public control. Public control is something that no administration likes. We don't care that administration doesn't like that. We are interested in official status of any projects, and this can be achieved by public observer. In this case, the public administration and the executor of the project will be involved, and of course the public group which is not aware that they want to improve some area and they do not have grids there. Another sphere is interaction of local administration to build dialogue with the public. That is why for the first year we have positive practices, and these 100 processes of initiative budgeting which had been implemented in our country in 85 constituent entities, that's probably not a good result. That is why I would like to give the floor and listen to my colleagues what shall we do in this regard. But we are preparing our offers and proposals. We'll summarize that and submit that to different executive bodies of our country, because it's not about region or municipalities. We have to regulate that on the federal level. That would be it. Thank you very much. I have many questions, but I would like to ask Sergey one question about this 5%. How do we calculate this 5%? It's 5% of what? I'm always astonished that people still do not understand that, because we have already provided methodological recommendations long ago, and we have the order adopted, which says where do you calculate. Of course, it's not from 5% of the total volume of budgetary funds. These 5% were mentioned in the order of the president, in the instruction by the president. There are 4 or 5 areas: improvement, sports, and other areas where this percentage should be calculated. And you calculate from the total amount of these parts how many percent are implemented within the tools of initiative budgeting. It's not the total expenses and total profit. There are 4 areas of funding. Every budget has it. The volume, the amount of these expenses is subject to calculation. There is nothing difficult to do that. And also we need to find the ratio between these amounts to the areas which I have mentioned, and we have this 5%. Now we cannot analyze it. Some people have 0.01 and somebody had 200. Somebody sent us a report with 200%. How they calculated that, nobody knows. But the number was there in the report, 200. After seeing these results, which did not make us happy, we prepared an order. There is an instrument, but nobody reads it, probably. Thank you very much. We have to read it, and we need to write it. That is why I would like to give the floor to Ivan and ask him a question. And we have the new version of state policy of the Russian Federation. Does it include initiative budgeting? Can we have my presentation back? No, we don't need slides. Of course, it's a strategic document as a foundation, as a basis, which has to be accompanied by the plan of implementation within 6 months, and our organization is one of the developers. Of course, there will be many areas, but involvement of the population into implementation of national projects, regional projects, what's happening in the regions is our priority. Agglomerations, development of rural areas. I'm just trying to, it is not a full list, but I'm trying to quote some. And inter-budgetary relations, it's another topic, it's another subject. I will explain, it's our panel, because initiative budgeting, its amount depends on the capabilities of the municipalities or their budget to do something. Today, there are proposals to make some critical changes at the level of municipal association of the Council of the Federation to finish this debate. We say that we often hear that there are not enough funds. The regional budget, unfortunately, has 20% maximum, which can allocate additional funds to the municipalities. I would like to hear the question yes or no. Yes, of course. Absolutely. Initiative budgeting includes many projects. Legislation, which we have already mentioned. Rural areas, public areas. Citizens aged 14 and older can vote officially. To my point of view, initiative budgeting in school, within school programs is better. Criminal liability happens when a citizen is 14, and we would like to change, we would like to make this 14 years the age of possibility for people to take part in that. And we have our online speaker, Andrei Maximov. Good afternoon, dear friends. Can you hear us? We can hear you, but we can't hear you. Can you see me? Yes, now we can see you. First of all, congratulations on the day of financial work. I understand that the majority of participants of the forum are part of this wonderful profession and they are happy with their professional success. And number two, I would like to thank you for such an interesting discussion on the topic which today is one of the major prospective possibilities of development of all local communities, local territories, because initiative budgeting is a resource for local development at this stage, taking into account President's initiative about 5%. Dynamics in this sphere. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Dynamic of development of this institution and another factor which we also have to take into account, which I would like to dwell on. 12 or 13 years ago, Institute of Development took part in this project, the largest survey and study of local self-government, sociological, social study, expert groups in all the regions of the country, and we found one interesting thing about people's activities. They are active when it's possible to have an impact on distribution of resources. First of all, funds. If you need just to express your opinion, nobody will do that. They will sit on their sofas. If you speak about if we talk about some interest for them, in this regard, I'm happy to see the development of such institution, of such initiative budgeting, because the form of dialogue is very important. There are many forms. Self-organization of citizens. Yes, there are some, but only few. Low activity and low motivation among citizens is a problem. And the solution of this problem is monetary aspects. Self-organization of citizens, social initiatives, social projects, initiative budgeting. I would like to expand on a ratio, on comparison of initiative budgeting with other forms of local self-government, participation of citizens in local self-government, in public authorities. The list of these forms is very big. Nobody can count. If we speak about direct participation of citizens in the local self-government, there is federal law 13114. Among them, 3 is direct democracy, representative democracy, when there is representation in bodies of local self-government, and participatory democracy. When we speak about initiative budgeting, a number of forms were unified by a chain of interaction to implement the initiative projects. There are some organizations, there are elders of the settlement who can make a proposal on this initiative budgeting. Then we need to organize a meeting or a conference of all the residents. Other free forms include initiative budgeting of such a kind. This is how the process looks. If we discuss how the initiative of initiative project appears, very often this means discussions of such an initiative group, but there are some questionnaires, inquiries, etc., and citizens are another form of direct participation of citizens in local self-government, which is also at place. 6 out of 9 forms include initiative projects. Unfortunately, we do not have any statistics which would help us to determine. Unfortunately, I can't hear the speaker. Monetary resources, monetary funds, which citizens have within the frameworks of participatory democracy. Probably we shall ask Minister of Finance to calculate that, to analyze all the budgets of the municipalities, which amount was allocated to these municipalities to support them, maybe from Moscow to some regional specifics. We don't know how much they spent there, but I am confident that it's not comparable to 32 billion rubles in 2020. They were budget of initiative budgeting. Of course, it's uncomparable. Probably we cannot compare motivation. There is another question. In terms of initiative budgeting, we probably had to calculate and overview not only financial expenditures and budget efficiencies of these measures, but also the participation, the involvement of citizens. How many people took part in discussion of these projects? Could that be possible? I mean, in all the country, that will be very good to understand the process. How many people are recipients of, how many people are beneficiaries of these services and products which are used, which are provided using this money? Synchronization of all the resources in budgets which we have within this framework of budgeting, initiative budgeting, and the motivation of this big system of self-organization of citizens in different forms. That's probably will be the next stage of initiative budgeting development. This question was already asked to representative of the Ministry of Finance. Sergei Romanov said that this question should be resolved step by step. And now we have to understand what are the next steps, what are the next tasks. This is my proposal: synchronization, synergy, to provide synergy as a priority at the next step. What do I mean? In addition to democracy, we have different forms of self-organization and public control. For example, public control bodies are public chambers of municipalities, of the federation, of the constituent entities of the Russian federations. Why don't we recommend, and we are willing to do that, why don't we recommend them a proposal of initiative projects implementation with participation of the public chambers of municipalities or constituent entities of the Russian Federation? Obviously, this process is vertical from bottom to the top because some projects are supported locally, and maybe public chamber of Russia could also implement or support um, such projects, or it will not propose, but at the municipal level it could be a very significant measure of support for projects which the majority of which, and I assure you that we are trying to support that, to develop the system. We organize competitions in municipal chambers, in constituent entities of the Russian Federation. For them it can be additional resource, and it can be a methodology of implementation of such projects through system of initiative budgeting. Andrei, please, I ask you to summarize synergy of initiative budgeting is something very popular now. It has something in common with other spheres. Competitions. Competitions, for example, the competition of staff. I was a moderator of one of such competitions in the region of Penza. Why don't people who present their project in these competitions to try to take part in initiative budgeting at the local level? There are competitions within this system of support of public chamber. They were organized, ideas changing the cities. This is a competition for youth, for school pupils, for students. They present their architectural projects, and because it's not possible to have tendering system applied to them, they just do not receive financing. In such a segment of initiative budgeting, it is required. As for the territorial and local self-government, I believe that the methodological recommendations could include the territory of activity, the territory of operation. It should be specified, because new legislation about the regional and local authorities, about territorial self-government, is also very important, and this means that there can be a lot of proposals, but I would invite you to analyze, to think how energy in this sphere could be used to develop initiative budgeting. On the one hand, we can speak about territorial self-governments which are not registered. About 125,000 of them are not registered actually, and without these TCGs they could provide initiative budgeting. Some people do that, some of them do that, but maybe it should be promoted. We should persuade these people. We should provide them with recommendations. On the other hand, as Ivan said, when an initiative project is being implemented, there is a question arises. Who is responsible for that? Who is monitoring the results of this territorial improvement? Building of touristic attraction, even the social projects. Who will be administrating that? Who will monitor that? I believe that here other forms, for example, territorial self-governments, can be provided with the methodological recommendations, or maybe we can even amend the legislation on the territorial and on the federal level to make it work and to improve motivation of citizens. Motivation of citizens ensures control of implementation of initiative projects. Thank you very much, Andrei. Yes, there are many common points of development of territorial self-government, local self-government. I believe that we will discuss these topics many times, and we will analyze different practices in different regions. That is why I would like to give the floor to Lira Iktisamova, Minister of Finance of the Republic of Bashkortostan. Thank you very much. And I would like to congratulate all regional financial experts, local financial experts, federal financial experts on this holiday. And I wish you the prophesied of budget, I wish you the best of luck, and I wish you good health. When you were voting, it was said that probably all the financial experts will choose the position that initiative budgeting is a way to increase efficiency of budgetary expenses, but the practice of our work in Bashkortostan proved that it's a rather good form of building a dialogue between the government and the population, between the government and the population and business, I would say, because we have sponsors who also take part in implementation of all the projects. For 8 years we have been implemented initiative budgeting in the Republic, and as for the perception of these practices by the population, we can say, as head of the Republic of Bashkortostan, Mr. Khabirov said that over these years we need to analyze that. Since 2014 till now, 2021, we have almost 11,000 projects based on principles of initiative budgeting. The total amount about 10 million rubles, and among this amount 8 billion rubles is subsidized from the budget of the Republic, and sponsors also provided 1 billion rubles together with the population, and this is very important. If we compare percentage of the costs, if we analyze total cost, let us speak about 2019, before the pandemics, it's 1.25% of the total expenses of the budget of the Republic of Bashkortostan. Of course, last year we have to decrease our expenses, so we have been implementing 5 models of initiative budgeting. Of course, the most large-scale one is program of support of local initiatives, which has been implemented in 2014. Also, we launched a program of Bashkir Yarats, very popular. It's about repair of yards with participation of the citizens, and there it includes acceptance of the works performed by the residents of this house. Also, we have some projects in agriculture implemented. For 2 years, as I have said, we decreased the financing amount, and we wanted to analyze how the subsidies are allocated, and we start this position again in next year, and we have many projects in consumer goods industry because the population needs to grow, it needs jobs, and the most prospective ones are services, consumer goods industry, etc., and agriculture, of course, and processing of agricultural goods. Also, we have a real business model with participation of electorate, and we have an interesting practice, such a model as our village, our settlement. The projects which did not win in the competition, but they did not win subsidy, but the local community decided to implement these projects with the participation of subsidies from the local budgets, from sponsors. We have this Наше Село, our settlement projects. Now we are working on the school initiative. We have pilot schools, and now we debate on the amount of our national budgeting, how it shall be distributed. It should be a competition among the Republican schools or within the schools, or we shall provide 1 million to each school, or we can provide 300,000 to 350,000, not to make this school budgeting the project of director of a school, not pupils. And today it was said that there should be a motivation from local authorities, from municipalities, and there should be initiative. Of course, without funding, it's impossible to implement any project. Probably, if it's implemented, the scale will be very small. And another practice which we have, which was launched by the head of our republic, Ataysal project. Ataysal means help your small motherland. This is a call for citizens from Republic of Bashkortostan, or for example from municipalities or of the republic who moved to the capital and who are successful businessmen to implement something in their native region, attracting the society and implement some projects. It's a very new project. We are monitoring its implementation, but many things have already changed, and the country fellow men unite. Some people finance these projects even from the United States. We have the project to build fences, to restore the monuments, or provision of clothes to children in settlements. These projects are not a large-scale ones. The project can be small, but it need to help to improve the territory. What else have you noted? The typology of the projects has changed. In the very beginning, we had many projects in the sphere of improvements, road construction, water supply, repair of some public spaces, and of course replacement of windows at schools, procurement of some equipment. Now we select the projects related to beauty, to spiritual development. This is also becoming very popular in our republic. This doesn't mean that people do not want more money or something, but it means that the initiative goes from bottom to the top, and the solution, the decision is made by the government. Of course, we need to develop legislative basis. In our republic, we operate on the basis of the decree of the head of the republic, and we have some municipal legal acts. And another specific feature of its implementation of projects is that without the willing of head of municipality or region cannot be developed, because we know that and we did the benchmarking. Today we have about 20 municipal areas with the 100% of settlements which take part in practices of initiative budgeting. There are some areas where 100% of the applications became winners, but when you try to understand how the work is organized, there are rules. The head of administration controls everything. There is his deputy who is working with funding. Of course, there are people who work with sponsors, business sheriffs, so-called. Everyone has its own functions, and these functions are controlled. The problem of this year and last years are related to growth of prices for construction materials. Many projects are delayed, postponed. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, not all the participants take part in the share they wanted to before the pandemic. There are many delays, and I can speak a lot about that if you have questions. Thank you very much. Financial experts are very disciplined people. They have 1 minute for reserve. If during this 1 minute you can say, why do you have 5 practices? Because you have a variety of them. Some regions don't have even one. As I have said, we started with the program of support of local initiatives. It covered a number of areas of our sub-regions or areas which were unified within the sub-regional programs frameworks, just to initiate these projects. And other areas heard about them, somebody told them, and they were interested. And now in all the areas of the Republic, we have very active participants. We work together with the Research and Development Institution. We work together with the World Bank. It allowed us to implement different projects, and Наше село, our settlement, is a choice of people. There are models of practices, but we continue doing that. We are open for dialogue. If the people are ready to implement these projects, like our village or our settlement, why not? School budget as well. All these things are very successful, where we have taken measures of increasing financial literacy of the population. This is very important for people. We teach them basics of financial, budgetary planning, etc. Financial literacy and initiative budgeting are friends, and we need to unite them. Thank you very much. You just made the perfect introduction of our next speaker, Artur Repin, from Yamal-Ninets Autonomous Area. I would like to ask you the following question. You are one of the first regions which develop school initiative budgeting, and financial literacy is at the very high level. Do you see any synergy between these two things, school initiatives, when children implement projects in financial literacy? Because I can see this link. Yes, Vladimir, thank you very much for your question. Yes, I agree with you. All these categories which you mentioned are related to the initiative budgeting. Moreover, in Yamal, school budgeting is considered to be an element of financial literacy, because all the efforts were invented to do that. My colleague from Bashkortostan mentioned an example that they are debating about an amount which is provided to each school. In our region, this amount is 300,000 rubles. To avoid this, to avoid the situation when the adults take all the advantage of this money to do something they need to do, children should participate in the projects in the very beginning, since the scratch. For us, school initiative budgeting is first of all financial literacy. Thank you very much. I have a question to both of you. To a certain kind personal question. We have a competition of the best project of initiative budgeting, and this year we have special nomination school initiative budgeting, and it is awarded with the 100,000 rubles. Is it a lot, or is it not enough for a school to implement any project? Is it a lot, or is it small amount? If we provide more money, probably it will be temptation for the director of the school. I believe that the amount is very good for a school, it's very optimal. As my colleague from Yamal-Ninets Autonomous Area said, that 300,000 is the amount of subsidies per school. We can provide 100,000 rubles is good now. Yeah, we can give that only to the leaders, to the winners. Of course, it's non-material motivation. This is very important, because school is a school. Of course, it's an impetus. If the school will be is mentioned at the federal level, it's additional advantage. Today, there were some examples presented to Mikhail at the opening of the portal My Finance, and we want to integrate these projects of financial literacy, initiative budgeting at the federal level. We presented that to Mikhail Vladimirovich, Prime Minister, And it was very interesting when children and students were talking about that. I would like to give the floor to our foreign guest, Joana Pinta Balsemao, Council of the Municipality of Cascais, Portugal. We have online connection.
Hello, good afternoon. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear, but we
I will
don't
share
see
my
you.
screen. I will share my presentation, if that's okay. So I will speak to you today about Cascais participatory budget. I hope you can see. Yes.
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, so this is Cascais in Portugal, near the capital, Lisbon. We have around 200,000 population and 123 nationalities. And this is what the celebration of participatory budgets looks like. This image represents the end of a cycle. This cycle has 5 parts. First, we prepare, then we have public sessions where we collect proposals, and we analyze the proposals technically, and then the people vote, citizens vote. Last time, 95,000 people voted, almost 50% of the population. And then we announce the results. These are just some images of phase 2, the public participation sessions, where citizens come in large rooms and they sit in tables, they discuss ideas. At each table, they will elect 2 ideas. And then in plenary, they will elect 10 or 15 ideas. When the most voted proposals are collected, we will join our teams and do a technical analysis. The maximum ceiling for each project is 350,000 euros. Our obligation, the municipality, has to implement each project within 3 years. So these are our teams analyzing different aspects of the proposals. We have to understand if the proposals are viable or not. If they are not viable, then they will be removed, and we will explain to the proponents why we had to remove them. Then there is a voting phase. So all the proposals that were approved in the technical analysis will be submitted for voting, and we use SMS. Only 1 telephone number and 2 votes for each person. And there are measures to ensure that only 1 phone number can vote. We don't want the same phone number voting 10 times on the same project. So this doesn't happen. And then finally, we have the big ceremony where we announce the winners. So what are our main numbers? Participatory budget in Cascais has existed for 9 years. In 9 years, we have had almost 8,000 participants in the public sessions. I'm sorry, there's something wrong in the PowerPoint. We've spent 38 million euros, not 38 million participants. We have had 176 winning projects, over 400,000 voters. And on average, we expend 15% of our investment budget on participatory budgets. How is participatory budget used? How are citizens voting to use it? Many of the projects are for education, others are for sports, some for urban areas, others for public roads, and others for green spaces. These are the main groups. So we have had participatory budget happening since 2011. And this graph shows our implementation rate. And as you can see, in some cases, we were not able to obtain our golden rule, which is to implement a project at least 3 years after it has been proposed. But these are very few exceptions, and for each exception there is an explanation, and we are working closely with the proponents. So the proponents and the community at large, they know why the project is late. There are no black boxes in this process. We always explain what is happening. So I will give you some examples of the kinds of projects that are on the ground, very briefly. This project shows a cultural association that was in a very bad condition, as you can see. And through participatory budget, the association was able to renovate its building. But it was not only a renovation of the building, it was also a renovation of what happens inside the building. So because of the renovation that was possible through participatory budgets, this association had a new life. It was almost dying. It is a very important and old association in our municipality, but it was almost disappearing because it had no infrastructural conditions. Participatory budgets gave it a new face, but also a new heart. And today, the program, the cultural program inside this association is so interesting and so trendy that it has more references in cultural agendas than the cultural programs of the municipality. This project shows that we gave a van, you can see the van here on the right, to a charity association. This charity association, they cook food and distribute it to people that are vulnerable, that are poor. And the van is electric, and participatory budget provided solar panels on the roof of the charity association and an electric fueled van to distribute food. So we are helping civil society to do its job, its mission, in a cleaner way and more efficient way. Here I have put some photographs of fire brigades in Cascais and in Portugal. Unfortunately, very often there are summer fires, forest fires, very, very often. The fire brigades need to be well equipped when there's fires. And so the fire brigades participate in participatory budgets in order to buy new vehicles. And these vehicles are extremely necessary, extremely important in fighting fires. And Cascais fire brigades use these vehicles to help other parts of the countries also fight fires. And so this is a ceremony whereby we were attributing these vehicles to the fire brigades. I have to make a note. Firefighting is not the responsibility of a municipality. It is the responsibility of central government in Portugal. But in Cascais, we realized that in participatory budgeting, there was a very strong need for better vehicles. And so we decided that we would replace the obligation of central governments and carry out this investment ourselves, because central government was not doing this. Okay, here I show you a project which is a skate park. And this project shows how sometimes unexpected ideas come up in participatory budgeting. And it shows how politicians just have to accept, because participatory budgeting is a totally transparent process, and there is a regulation. This regulation is approved in the city council meeting and in the municipal assembly meeting. And so when this project came up 9 years ago, the mayor, you can see the mayor here on the bottom photograph, not skating, the other one. The mayor was not very happy. He thought a skate park might not be a good idea in a residential neighborhood. But this project had many, many votes. It was the most voted project that year. And so he had to say yes, and the project went ahead. And yesterday, this skate park celebrated its 8th anniversary. And it's hugely popular. It's used by all generations, and it's used in international competitions. It has put Cascais on the map of skateboarding competitions. And actually, it's a really healthy and vibrant place. It's a project that the municipality would not have proposed by itself. It's a project that was proposed by the citizens. And now it's implemented, and it has shown us that all our fears were not necessary. This is a project that has not yet been implemented, so it's an image I got from the internet. But I wanted to use this example to explain that there's other unexpected projects that are coming up, that are proposed in participatory budgets. And this project was proposed by a 13-year-old girl. She wanted to have science classes outside, in the park, in nature. And she got so many people to vote for her project that she came in second. And so now we are working to implement her idea. It's an immaterial project almost, and it's extremely interesting. Okay, so why does a municipality like Cascais want to have a participatory budget? Why do we want to co-create? Why do we want to open hand of power? Why do we want to share power with the citizens? Why are we doing participatory budgets for 10 years? Because we understand that it builds trust. It closes the gap between the politicians, like myself, and the citizens. It makes us connect in a different way. And it builds trust because we are entirely transparent throughout the whole process. And it creates trust because we deliver. It's very important to deliver and to implement the projects that are voted as soon as possible. Also, we believe in participatory budget because it means that we can have projects that are really, truly responding to people's needs. So as a municipality, as politicians, we believe that we know what people need. And in fact, we do know. Yeah, I'm almost finishing.
Yes, sorry, we are out of time.
Yeah, it's only the last paragraph. We do know what people need in general, but in many aspects, we don't know everything. And so this tool allows us to respond to people's needs. In order to do this properly, we need political will, we need a team, we have a dedicated team just working for participatory budgets. We need to implement, to deliver, and we need transparency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Большое спасибо за такой...
Thank you very much for such an interesting description of Qashqai's experience. I know that many people working in the sphere of initiative budgeting visit this city, and when you demonstrated the pictures, I understand why they love to come to your city. And I would like to give the floor to our next foreign speaker, Tarson Nunez, who will also be presenting online. Tarson Nunez, please.
First of all, I would like to thank the Minister of Finance for the invitation. It's an honor to be part of this event because nowadays your experience of initiative budgeting in Russia is one of the most important experiences of participatory democracy in the world. So it's very interesting to me to be sharing my experience as a practitioner and as an academic. I worked in the Porto Alegre municipality for several years in the beginning of the 90s, but I also did my master's degree and my doctorate thesis about the experience of participatory budgeting in Porto Alegre. And Porto Alegre, as you should know, is one of the first experiences of participatory budgeting in the world. And most of what I will speak today has to do with the findings of a research we did with the World Bank in 2007 about the 25 years of, at the time, of experience of participatory budgeting in Porto Alegre. Porto Alegre, we had a very radical experience of participatory budgeting because all the capital investments were decided by the population, by the direct participation of the population. And we have 2 rounds of assemblies. On the first one, there was the rendering accounts of the previous year's investments, and we voted for general priorities, like sectorial priorities, like health, paving streets, education, and so on. So on the first round, the population decided the amount of money which go to each one of the secretaries. And on the second round, they decided and voted about the works. This was very interesting, and it worked very good for many years. But I'll try to make a reflection about this specific part of PB, which is the dialogue between government and citizens. Because participatory budgeting is not only a very effective decision-making process, but also a new channel of communication between the governments and the citizens. So in that sense, we must pay as much attention in the process as we do to the outcomes. The results are as important as the way you get to the results. And PB is definitely an open space of learning and a space of civic education. And many studies identify the positive correlation between participation and the good allocation on investments and improvement of tax efficiency. So in terms of the results, in terms of the outcomes, it's very easy to see that participatory budgeting is a very interesting experience for governments. But through PB is also, it's important to notice that through PB is also important to establish a direct flow of information between governments and citizens. not mediated by political representatives or not mediated by the media. So government can talk directly to the citizens, receive the input of their ideas and demands, and decide better based on this dialogue with the population. So PB allows to build a debate around very objective issues, not influenced by the political dispute. So it's important to notice as well that this dialogue goes both ways, from the government to the citizens. When the citizens learn how government works, understand the dynamics of the public sector, understand the limits of the revenues, understand how all the procurement procedures go on. So it's a process where citizens have to take into account issues that are broader than their own and immediate private interests, and start to look at the city as a whole and look at their interests related to the interests of their community. So this allows us to build a different relationship, shifting from the position of someone who only presents demands to the state to a position of someone who is collaborating to build public policies. And you have in initiative budgeting in Russia this very interesting experience of co-financing. So people help to decide what is going to be done, and people also are willing to put their own money on this process. But this dialogue goes both ways, from the government to the citizens, when citizens learn about the dynamics of government, but also from the citizens to the government, where cities officials also learn how to relate with the public, how to communicate. And in this sense, participatory budgeting breaks the bureaucratic routine of the city officials. They must learn new skills, and they must improve their abilities to deal with the public. This is, in theoretical terms, is very beautiful, but in real life, things are more complicated than it seems. In this study that we've done with the World Bank in 2007, our studies showed that one of the main findings was that PB was a very good instrument to give more efficiency regarding capital investments, but it was not, in the end of the day, it was not as effective in terms of the public debate where municipal fiscal policy and revenue and expenditure management as a whole can be discussed. So we were good on delivering, but the part of the dialogue where citizens can learn more about the government wasn't so effective. This was essentially a problem of communication, and our issue today is this dialogue, and that showed that the dialogue wasn't as productive as it could be. In the same study, we did a survey with all the population of the city about how do they see participatory budgeting. And in this survey, we identified that when you talk about citizens, you have to understand that are different ways the citizens engage in the process. On the survey, we realized that only 1% of the population really attended the assemblies, the core of the participatory budgeting, which is the public assemblies. Only 1% of the population. But 20% said that in one time or another they had participated in participatory budgeting. There's an echo. I'm hearing my own voice. Well, 1% were active participants, attending all the assemblies and being directly involved in participatory budgeting. 20% said that in one time or another they had participated in the assemblies or in the community meetings before the assemblies or in any other meeting organized by community associations. But 90% of the population knew about PB, and 66% thought it was very important to the city. This teaches us that there are different levels of participation. And this shows that we must have different approaches in terms of communication. The dialogue between the city governments or the local government and the population must be designed according to the capabilities and the needs of these different kinds of public. So when we design a process, we have to pay as much attention in the communications as we do to the institutional design of the process. We must design a process that must be able to communicate with the citizens considering the different kinds of engagement. So we have different levels of information in terms of content and in terms of publics. In terms of publics, we have to have one kind of communication with the active participants, the people who attend the assembly, the people who are members of NGOs, social movements, community associations. Those are the more active. They require some kind of information. We have to have a different kind of information to the eventual participants, those who are part of the process but that are not that much engaged, who are sympathetic to the process but are not more active. And we have a different kind of communication to the general public, those who know about participatory budgeting, those who think this is something interesting but they do not participate directly. And we also have to consider the importance of communicate with the city officials themselves, because they also have things to learn in order to have an efficient engagement in participatory budgeting. And we have different levels of information also in terms of contents. We have to provide information about the process for people to understand what is at stake. We have to have information about the rules, how it's going to be done, and we have to have information about public finances in order to allow people to understand what is a budget, where the revenues come from, how it's going to be spent. So the bulk of my message is that any kind of participatory budgeting, in order to be efficient, have to have an important component of communications in order to keep this flow of information going on. And we have to have different strategies to the different publics that we deal with the active participants, the stakeholders, the delegates, the civil society organizations, the NGOs, the social movements. Those active participants must have capacity building on legal issues. They must debate deeply about the process, how are the rules, how to improve it. So this is a more sophisticated and more in-depth information. On the second stage, to the eventual participants or the sympathetic public, those needs to have information that provides them budget literacy. What is a budget? How is the cycle? Where the revenues come from? This is not that complex information, but also information about the process as a whole and how to engage them as active participants. And to the general public, we also have to have a different kind of information, more basic, explaining was it participatory budget, how government works, what is the public budget. Is a more basic budget literacy process. So we have to think that we have to have different communication strategies according to the different publics, and also a communication strategy to the city official in order to improve their skills, in order to make them learn how to use better the feedback from the citizens that they receive on the participatory budget process. So my message is that we must have connected to participatory process always a strategy of communication that is as important as the institutional design of the process, because with these good communications, with a systematic approach and with this strategic approach to the communications, and different kinds of citizens require different kinds of communications in order to have really good participatory processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Большое спасибо всем.
Thank you very much, dear speakers. Actually, we have such a good international community of experts on initiative budgeting. Colleagues interact, exchange experience, and which makes me really happy is that 5 or 6 years ago Russia learned from foreign countries, but now Russia can teach, and our practices are very interesting for many foreign countries, and somewhere we create new programs of initiative budgeting, and this is a very good thing, but we continue to learn best global practices because it's a two-way road. Distinguished colleagues, we are out of time. I will not start the discussion. We can discuss it after the session, and very soon, after in 20th of September, we will have the ceremony of awarding the winners in the sphere of initiative budgeting. We will have an opportunity to debate, to argue, to discuss everything. That is why I believe that we will have the QR code again. Those who didn't vote can take the opportunity to do that, and I give you 10 seconds to do that. And after that, I invite Alexei Lavrov, who will award the laureates in the category budget for citizens. Since we are late, since we are out of time, everything was interesting, and the Prime Minister said that initiative budgeting is one of the priorities of the government activities. We all work and we do good job. We have a competition which is related to the initiative budget and budget for citizens. The clearer the budget is presented, the more people take part in that, implement these 20,000 projects. The competition takes place for the 5th time, but it's tradition that we award the laureates at the forum. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Financial University, which organizes this competition. And its scale is growing, is increasing. We have 3 new nominations. The number of participants increased by 30%. We have a new record. This year we have 47 entities of the Russian Federation, more than half, and we have 48 winners. All of them will be awarded with prizes. Today we have 2 winners in 2 categories: budget for citizens and budget for citizens project by legal entities. And the first one is by individuals. The selection criteria was the biggest number of points, and I have an honor to announce the winner in the category budget for citizens by individual. This project explains clearly what the government does in the situation of pandemic, who has the right to act in emergency situations, who has, and the winner is Oksana Yermolaeva. She is absent, but there is authorized representative, Marina Viktorovna. Please take the award. Where is the award? Orenburg region. Thank you very much for your support. And project by legal entities. The winner is Minister of Finance of Perm region. Public program of Perm region, and I would like to give this award to the Minister of the region. Thank you very much. Dear friends, thank you very much and hope to see you again on the margins of initiative budgeting. Please wait, we have to wait for the voting results. I understand that the results will be correct, but let us just take a look at this. We had the choice. C, 3 options had almost similar number of votes, and the winner is a possibility for citizens to resolve problems. Some people voted for tool for improvement of efficiency of budget expenses, and a lot was said about dialogue of government and population, and I voted for point number 2, because for us this is very important. It's very important that people solve their problems, and this is why this tool was created. We will discuss that many times. This tool will be developed. I invite you to our institute, Financial Research Institute. Thank you very much and goodbye.